Hi, it's Brett, the herbalist, and we're back with another episode of Secrets of Herbal Healing. And today we're talking about resolving candida with food and herbs. Last week we talked about the various types of candida and how candida actually infects the body and what some of the underlying causes might be that allow it to happen. But today what we're going to do is talk about how you can use household foods and herbal medicines to control and resolve candida so that it doesn't come back. And that's a big problem we have with candida is chronic candida can keep coming back and be very, very hard to resolve. So today we're looking at a long-term solution for candida. So stay with us. All right, so what I'm going to do is share my research page, and we'll do that. There's a QR code in the corner there that you can use to follow along with us on the page. So feel free to jump on there. And right, so what I'll do is share screen, and we'll get into it. So Candida, it's one of those annoying things. We can resolve it, we can control it, but we can never completely get rid of it because it's one of those organisms that we're exposed to all the time, and it happens to be in our body regardless of our situation. So it's really a matter of controlling it and getting it under control, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's look at some of the foods we can use. And obviously, Candida often starts in the gut and it can get into the body further. But what we're going to do mainly is talk about resolving it in the gut so that the immune system can take care of it elsewhere in the body as well. So some of the foods that cause Candida, let's look at those first because these are the ones we want to avoid while we're doing a Candida diet or Candida program. So sweets, number one on the list, because Candida is a yeast. It's a type of fungi, but it's a yeast. And yeasts love sugar. You're probably familiar with that process of fermentation when you produce things like bread or we make ginger beer or any other thing with yeast. They just thrive on sugar. So if you starve them of sugar, they have a really tough time surviving. So that's a big thing. Anything that's also a yeast will encourage other yeasts because they like to sort of thrive together, if you like. So things with yeasts like bread, like alcohol, other fermented products. Normally, you would think fermented foods are good for the gut, and normally they are. But in a situation where you've got chronic candida, you don't want to encourage more yeasts to grow in the gut. Acid-forming foods, so meats, cheese, eggs, too much protein, too much heavy animal protein can cause an acidic environment in the body, especially in the gut. It's something we don't often think of because carnivorous animals have 10 times the acid in their gut than vegetarian animals or animals that eat plant-based foods because it requires so much more acid to digest the meat. And that's a really interesting fact, actually, that it's a really acid-forming food. Processed carbs, so they're close, very, very close to being sugars. They work in a similar way. They convert to sugar very quickly. Things like pasta, noodles, chips, biscuits, breads, things that are simple starchy foods. So potatoes, rice, all those simple starches and processed carbs you want to avoid because they will feed that yeast. So that's just a really quick snapshot of what you could do with your diet. Avoid those things. Now let's look at some foods that you can introduce that will actually help to control Candida yeast from growing in the body. So one of the key fundamentals we talked about was acid foods. So obviously, if you go into an alkaline diet, you're going to discourage yeasts from growing in the body. And the alkaline foods, funny enough, are fruits and vegetables because fruits and vegetables are very high in potassium, which is the main alkaline mineral in your body. So fruits and vegetables will discourage Candida. Good fats. So good fats are known to disrupt the biofilms and help to prevent adhesion of the Candida into the cells. So lots of good fats in your diet, and we'll talk about a few of those in detail. But avocado and salmon, you can see pictured there. And lots of herbs and spices, because herbs and spices are antimicrobial, antifungal, antibacterial. So generally, using a lot of herbs like curries and chilies and things like that and other spices will help discourage yeast in your body. So there you go, nice little picture, sort of an overview of some of the dietary adjustments you could make. And this needs to be a long-term thing. So short-term, you can do an intense Candida program, but the overall dietary changes need to be long-term if you want to control it. So acidophilus yogurt works like a probiotic in the body. Well, it is a probiotic in the body. It helps to combat the yeast from growing. And that's because it produces this substance here, hydrogen peroxide. And that's as the yogurt gets processed in the gut, it produces the hydrogen peroxide. And hydrogen peroxide is like a natural antifungal. It's like a natural antiseptic, in fact. And you can also use yogurt topically. So if you've got vaginal candida, you can use yogurt there by soaking a tampon in yogurt, or you can even use a frozen yogurt ice cube and insert that and just let it melt internally. So an interesting way to use yogurt. That can give sort of instant relief from itching and burning sensations from candida. So mushrooms. Now, mushrooms are very powerful immune tonic herbs. They contain beta-glucans, which boost the immune system. And interesting, you think, oh, that's a fungi. Well, yes, it is, but they actually have antifungal activity. So they prevent other fungi from thriving. So you don't often see mold or things growing on mushrooms, do you? So it's an interesting fact. They inhibit the growth of the yeast and the hyphal form of candida, which is when it's got the little tail where it gets into the cells. So it helps combat that form when it's infecting the body, which is really useful. And shiitake mushrooms in particular. So shiitake mushrooms, they're quite normal looking mushrooms, a bit like this one here. And it's really good to look out for that, where you can get a supply of those shiitake mushrooms. I found you can get them at Gilmore's in New Zealand, which you get them in a big bag of shiitake mushrooms, like a kilo bag, and they'll last you for several weeks, and they don't go off in the fridge. Interestingly, like other mushrooms go off reasonably quickly, shiitake mushrooms seem to last forever, which is great. You can even just dry them out and use them. So shiitake, I'd really be inclined to hunt those down if you can, and include them in your regular diet. Garlic, of course, garlic is an antibacterial. It's also an antifungal, and it interferes with the lipid layer on the yeast cells. So it leads to the disruption of the yeast's metabolic function, and it causes the yeasts to die. You can also use it in a cream, as you'll see there. It's been tested in a cream with thyme. So thyme oil is another antifungal. So you can make a little potion out of that and use it topically. Or you could make a garlic yogurt combination and use that topically as well. So very, very good. All round garlic. And including garlic in your diet long-term is a very good idea. I don't know if you've come across black garlic, but that's an interesting one where you can ferment the garlic and produce these garlic cloves that you can eat just whole, and they're just delicious. So it's another way of getting the garlic into your body. But a method I often use is honey. So chop the garlic raw into little pieces and then mix it into some liquid honey, and preferably something like Manuka honey or a good honey. And eat 6 cloves a day to be really effective as an antifungal. Onions. So onions, actually, I didn't mention the compound in garlic, allicin, which is the main active component, is also found in onions, allicin. And so not quite so high in onions, but having a lot of onions or a lot of raw onions, like red onion in your salad's a really good idea, will help to combat candida. So combining all these foods together is what we're going to do in a minute, which is a really interesting way to do this. And in coconut oil and coconut cream. So, we talked about good fats earlier, but coconut oil and coconut cream have these compounds in them, lauric acid and caprylic acid. And it's caprylic acid in particular, specifically, which is known to dissolve the cell membrane of candida. Interesting, isn't it? Dissolve the cell membrane. So that's a pretty powerful way of combating Candida. So I recommend using coconut cream as much as you can. So coconut curries, coconut cream in your smoothies, or coconut milk or coconut oil, or anything that's got the fat, the coconut fat in it. So coconut oil, you can eat that, or you can make it into your your cold slice or your brownie or whatever that you make, and use coconut oil prolifically. Don't be afraid of it. And I think that that should have a massive impact on your Candida. And so what I'm going to do now is just share a little recipe with you. So this is my favorite mushroom recipe, is mushroom stroganoff, and that's a combination of mushrooms, preferably shiitake mushrooms, and onions and garlic and chili, which we talked about a bit last time. It's a antibacterial, antifungal as well. So you put some chili pepper in there, or fresh chilies, and also a can of coconut cream. So you've got pretty much everything in one, and you can get that recipe if you go to the page. There'll be a link. There's a link here that you can click on to get that recipe, and it's absolutely delicious. It's got a bit of soy sauce in it, or oyster sauce in it, to just brown it a little bit, but it is absolutely delicious. And you can have this with almost any other dish. I quite like it with some sweet potato or kumara, and roast that, and then have the mushroom stroganoff along with that. Wonderful way to combat Candida. And you could have this every other night for a couple of weeks to really get all those components going through your body. Right, so what I'm going to do now is share some herbs, and towards the end we're going to share the Candida program, what I call the ultimate Candida program as well. So tea tree oil. So tea tree oil, we often use it topically on the skin, and so that's where it can be used quite well for Candida as well, just as a topical treatment for. And it may have a stingy, burny sensation when you put it on, and sometimes that's actually good if you can tolerate it, because it may just almost like burns off the Candida. It'll kill it. It's got this highly active compound in it, the oil, that does the job. So quite a good one to use, short term, just in bursts where you need it. Golden seal, it's known to reduce Candida biofilm formation. So golden seal has the compounds in it hydrastine and berberine, which have been shown to inhibit Candida growth. So these herbs you may not get so easily, and that's why I'm going to share the herbal program. What it does is, the foods are great, but when you put the herbs on top of the foods, you increase the effectivity of the effectiveness of the foods and the herbs, because you get that synergistic effect. And it is known that when you use specific foods with the specific herbs, that you can get up to 20 times more effect from the herbs and from the foods, either used individually. It's really interesting, that synergy effect. So black walnut. Black walnut has got the compound juglone, which is known to be antifungal. We often use it as an antiparasitic, but of course, when you think about Candida, it is a parasite. It's living off its host. So the antiparasitic effect of juglone works really well with Candida, and it's known to be a treatment option for tough strains of Candida. So there are multiple strains, as we talked about last time, of Candida, and some of them are much more, aggressive than others, and they need much stronger treatment. So if you've got chronic Candida, I'd highly recommend looking at using the herbs along with those foods. Cloves is another powerful one. So it's a very, very good antifungal. It's got the compound in it called eugenol, and it's used particularly for the vaginal Candida. And that's one you may have in your kitchen, but it's really good to get it fresh and freshly ground, or in capsules. Wormwood. So typically we use wormwood for parasites, hence the name worm, for worms. But it's also known to be an antifungal, effectively inhibiting yeast growth. And by the way, if you do look at this page, you'll notice there's little numbers next to each of the little statements. And at the top of the page, there's references. So you can actually find all of these references in the research for each of the herbs. If you're into that, just go digging a bit deeper. So what we do with the Ultimate Herbal Candida program is we give you all the herbs in a mega dose, all combined, and also with some sort of herbs behind the scenes that back it up and get it through your gut. And we also give you some herbal healing, gut healing as well. So you've got all those herbs we talked about, the golden seal, the black walnut, the cloves, and the wormwood, plus quite a few more antifungals and gut healers. So let's just look at them quickly. We've got a couple of minutes left. So the body cleanse involves using either so you do these both together over 1 month, and you do the body cleanse smoothie and the herbal detox capsules. This is what we call a double deep cleanse. So most people do a cleanse over 2 weeks. This is doing that same dosage of the 2-week detox over 1 month. So it's a double deep cleanse. And you're consuming the equivalent of 40 capsules a day, although you split this up into 2 parts. And I'll talk about that a bit more as we go on. So aloe vera juice. Now, this is really good for healing the gut and promoting good gut health, good healthy microbiome, which is really important when you're trying to control Candida. And we've got some probiotics in there too. And these are nice, strong probiotics, L-reuteri, which take hold and get themselves quite deeply rooted into your gut, so they can actually hold off Candida from coming back. So it's really good. There's 100 capsules of Candida Protectus by Gaia L-reuteri in there, which is a really good dosage. And then we've got a 500 ml, so a half-litre bottle of herbal medicine with a combination of all these antifungals. So licorice is antifungal as well. Horapito, which is a native New Zealand herb, known to be a very good herb for Candida. Paudarco, another antifungal, that's a Brazilian tree bark. Then we've got the wormwood, the black walnut, the golden seal, thyme, which we spoke about earlier, and also olive leaf, another antifungal. So these are all antifungal herbs. And what you do with this one is you take quite a good dose of this. It's 15 mils. And you can dilute it in water if it's too strong, but even better if you take it straight, it'll work even better. So there's the whole package. So as I mentioned with the body cleanse and the detox, you're taking the body cleanse smoothie, and we will recommend specific smoothies. The bowel cleanse smoothie is one of the best ones during your Candida program. And you do that in the morning with a big scoop of powder, and then you take 5 of each of the capsules at bedtime. And the others you do in the morning and night as well. So that's the Candida program. All right, so I'm just going to stop sharing now. And you can see it there. So it links straight through to that if you wanted to get the Candida program. And obviously you do this for 1 month, and that's a high dose of the herbs and all the foods specifically designed to combat Candida. You do this over 1 month, and then you shouldn't see it again in theory. So there was one other thing I wanted to share with you, which is called a probiotic implant. And so it's really also good if you've had chronic long-term Candida that's been impossible to resolve, to do an implant on enema. And so that's a combination of yogurt and water. And if you want to look into that, that's on the bottom of that page, and it'll go into a bit deeper in how you can do the probiotic enema implant. And that's a really good way to finish things off when you've done the Candida program, if you're at all concerned about it coming back. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope that's inspired you, if you did have that problem, to have a look into what you can do to resolve it with herbs and food. And I look forward to talking to you again in the next episode.